afternoon and welcome to Tetewathá, Partyline Talkshow. I'm your host, Lou Ann Stacey, and today is MCK Friday. And today I'm joined by Chief Ross Montour as well as Chief Tonya Perron. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon.
Is it? I'm not sure about that. You made me nervous for a second.
I almost said welcome.
You're just used to doing this job. You want to switch spots, Ross? Come on.
I keep dragging me back. No, thank you for having us. It's nice to be here. It's been a while.
It's been a while,
and it's good to be back. I had mentioned to Joe a couple of weeks back. Well, we had tried to schedule something prior to this. To come on, but unfortunately other circumstances prevented that from happening. But I thought it'd be a really good idea if Tonya and I would come on.
And what's been really nice, though, is almost all the chiefs have been on a very regular basis. And I know before, and I'm not being critical, but it was one or two or three people who would come on. And I think it's the way with your new format, it makes more sense because everybody has different responsibilities.
Well, yeah, having sat in your chair before, I was like almost sometimes right down to the last day. It's like, well, who's coming on? Who's coming on?
And it's not that way. It's not that way right now. Joe's been very good, and we know a week or two before, and it's not been difficult to get the chiefs on, which I think is another really good thing, and communities engaged, because I will get questions off air, and people will ask. So I think it works out pretty good.
I think it reflects the comfort level of the table, though, to be able to come on and, because not everybody, as not everybody who comes on to the talk show is comfortable being in front of a microphone.
Yesterday, my guest, both sets of guests, first and second half, had never been on the radio and were having heart attacks outside. Once we were in here, they did great, asked questions. And after that, I said, so now is it a problem to come on? Nope. It's just that first one. It was like, it's just really to break the ice. So speaking of breaking the ice, what are you up to? You want to give updates on your files. I think that makes the most sense. We'll start there. And
I think this is a good way to provide at large some updates to the community on the development in certain portfolios on different projects and that, because we do our community meetings, but it's the agenda is limited. We have certain items that are listed on the agenda, and then it's for open discussion. And so Ross and I think that every now and then it's a good idea to just come and explain what we've been up to. So I'll just hit on some key points, key developments in some of my portfolios, which most of them I'm on with Ross. So he'll just jump in and add his input. In terms of justice, we actually just had a nice detailed presentation by Kevin Fleischer on various matters in justice. And one of the things was with respect to the Kahnawake, the Justice Commission. The constitution of the Justice Commission is being worked on, and there's been some change to the composition of it, and there will be the need to go out to the community looking for a community rep. Kevin has indicated that will be at the end of the summer, so after the summer vacation. So anybody in the community that would be interested on sitting on the Justice Commission should keep that in mind and keep their eyes open for that there will be this vacancy for a community rep, given the new constitution and the moving around of certain members on the commission. I don't know if on that particular point, if there was something that Ross wanted to add.
I would just say, to encourage community members to give it consideration. Don't necessarily rule yourself out as a community rep. Look at what's being asked for in terms of involvement on the Justice Commission, and become a part of the development of different parts of our community having to do with justice. It could be other things as well, and we'll get into some of those other things a bit later. But please do, consider it. Give it some serious thought. The more that we get active interest in these call-outs, the better it is for the community as a whole.
And I think what's important is, people say they don't know a lot of the stuff that would go on, say, on the Justice Committee or any of the other larger committees. When you have an opportunity, get involved. people like to be critical, and I know I get involved, I volunteer where I can, when I can, and I do my part because I like to know what's going on. I don't want to hear it second, third, fourth, fifth hand,
Yeah, and if it's something that maybe you're interested in, but you're not quite sure, well, what does it entail? It's very simple. Call Kevin and ask. Call myself. I'll gladly explain what it entails. It's a commission that oversees justice services. It's not burdensome in terms of time. It doesn't meet every week. And it allows for the community, community rep to provide input into what is coming to the table of the commission. So if anybody ever sees anything that's posted anywhere in terms of a position, whether it be on a commission or a job posting, and you're not sure, ask.
And just to clarify, you used the word committee,
yeah,
and quite innocently. In this case, the commission is an oversight body. Okay?
But it switched, right? From was it always commission, or was it,
or was it? As far as I know.
Yeah, as far as I know.
Oh, well, that's good, though, because that raises a point. Like, sometimes things change, and you're still back in how, like I said, I've always known it as a committee. So
one of the things, when you think, when we thought about, say, let's talk about what's going on within the justice system in Kahnawake, we have heard over time, that people said, hey, well, you passed the Justice Act, how many years ago, et cetera. So, okay, what's going on? So these are very concrete things that are happening, they're developmental to the justice system of Kahnawake. So that's really important. Okay. I think that people know. Things are happening. Things are
changing,
moving,
right, and evolving.
You're putting the blocks into place, and you can be a part of it as well.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Tetewatha, Partyline Talkshow. I'm your host, Lou Ann Stacey, and today is MCK Friday, and I'm joined by Chief Ross Montour and Chief Tonya Perron, and they're basically giving us some updates, and I think it was a good discussion about the Justice Commission and some of that, because like I said, things change, and we always hear the exciting, more dramatic topics in the community. And sometimes things like this still need to go on. And, it's clarifying the changes and things, and getting the community involved, becoming more involved, I should say.
Yeah, yes, and I'm glad you make the point of community involvement because, in fact, within justice, there's going to be a number of opportunities for the community members to be involved in different aspects of the justice system. There's a number of positions that have either already gone to posting or will be coming soon for posting. One of them is the complaints officer, an alternate complaints officer, which is essentially to hear complaints under the disciplinary measures regarding chiefs. I believe that those two positions were posted, and if I'm not mistaken, I think if anybody's still interested, you can contact Kevin, even though I believe that the deadline may have passed. So anybody who would be interested to sit either as the principal officer or an alternate should definitely get in touch with Kevin. So those are two ways that community can have some involvement. Another one is going to be with the Community Review Board that is being set up in order to review the decisions of the registrar regarding the KKL and the KKR. That call out hasn't gone out yet, but will be coming out soon, and that is a requirement for 5 members.
Oh.
2 of which need to have a legal background, but 3 of which don't have that requirement. So there's another, potential for community participation in a body, a decision-making body or a reviewing body, I should say. I don't know if Ross wanted to say something.
No, the thing for me, and this is something Tonya and have talked about over our time on council. One of the things, if you have the activity of making laws, creating laws which are, you could say, they're akin to constitutional law. outside. So you pass laws that say have potential impact, and you need to have a redress. And in the past, I found to be in the membership law as it was passed in 2004. It didn't really have that. There really wasn't a place for, say, people to say, well, this law, I think a judgment was rendered that didn't take into account enough of the aspects to render a different decision or whatever. And there really wasn't a body there to be able to say, overturn a decision that was made by, say, the Council of Elders on membership at the time. So when you're going to have laws that have an impact on, and you always want to protect, say, in our case, we don't think always in terms of individual rights but we talk about collective rights as well. But when you pass laws, you want to be able to have a forum that people can trust, that they can feel comfortable with, that are meeting the needs of the community, that they have redress. There's a formal process to say, well, I think a mistake was made in my case. I would like this to be reviewed, and the possibility of saying, you know what, we looked at those things and we decided they do have a point, and so we can change a decision. And that's one of the key things, I think, with the Community Review Board overlooking, say, those two particular laws. And so while there is that requirement that two of those people are going to have a legal background, because you have to understand legal principles in order to be able to have that body function properly, but to have also other people, community members, to be involved in looking at that, So again, the only thing I would say is I encourage people, don't think right away, well, I don't think I could do that. Think of what you do know. People, when you think about it, know more than you think you know.
Absolutely.
And that's important to acknowledge.
I have a question, Ross, for you from a listener. When there's band meetings, would it be able to put it on tape? This caller is blind, and it would be good to know what's going on.
I think as much as there are people at council listening right now, please take note of that.
It's a suggestion.
I think it's a good suggestion. And I hope I'm not going out too far in the limit, but I mean, we always are, we should always be thinking about ways in which we can reach all community members. Not everybody can get to a meeting.
It's the same thing like this show we're taping now, and we know a lot of people can't listen sometimes at lunch, so we get to see this on TV on a regular basis. So there's some potential.
I would say to whoever asked the question, y'all go, because that's an important one.
Yeah, I think so too. And like you said, the more information that gets out there, then more people are aware of what's going on. And that's always been an issue with the Mohawk Council, has been transparency. And we've talked about that for years. And it happens in some of the organizations as well, that people feel that people in organizations are above the people, yet you're there because of the people of the community, and sometimes that's a difference. So this might be a great opportunity to break down another barrier.
For sure. And even, like I said, just coming on the radio and giving the updates, that's a matter of transparency, accountability, responsibility. All of that plays into that, And these are things, as Ross said, they're not so, full of, drama or controversy, but it's work that we have to do, in the portfolios that we have. So you may not always see us at a meeting or on the radio or the TV, but we're doing all of this work in the background to further push our jurisdiction, expand our court system, open up all these positions that are coming up, create job opportunities, so that's why I enjoy coming on the radio and being able to provide all of that information, to the community. I think it's really, really helpful.
Okay. So what are some other portfolio updates?
Well, in terms of the legislation portfolio, or legislative portfolwell, also known as the KLCC, but I just refer to it as legislation.
In fact, before we came, we were discussing, maybe we'd like to change the name of this to that and for different. But I said, really, because what we're doing is we're thinking developmentally. And then one of the things that concerned both of us, was the idea of making sure that we have these different branches functioning. And so I don't want to get too much of it. We've talked about that before, but
we're working on some concepts, some ideas on how to, I'll say, for lack of a better term, improve sort of that legislative branch. Not quite sure what that will look like at the moment, but the more immediate projects that we're working on in there is the repeal process policy, developing a repeal process policy for the laws. We've been reviewing the CDMP procedural manual. More or less, just making some fine tuning, nothing major. Also looking at the CDMP regulations process, the flow chart, and the policy. So those are things that we were working on just to see if there's anything that can be, as I said, fine tuned, and where we can go, with the legislation office, if I can call it that. So for that, I think in terms of legislation, that's essentially where we're at for the moment.
Yeah, everything is a work in progress.
And continuing work. I think sometimes people don't see that behind the scenes work that has to happen, continuing to go.
But the goal is, and we talked about transparency a moment ago, and the goal is always to improve and build upon what we have. You can start with a basic building block, or say, okay, we have the Justice Act, and we want to build that so that it actually has a functioning foundation and develop the services over time. The same thing with how we pass legislation in the community. Tonya touched on the sort of the repeal process, and part of that is like, okay, when do you look at a law? What laws do you look at? What you'd say, okay, it's not about repealing, it's about amending things. There's a review process for all of those things. And so those are the things that we're looking at in terms of the legislative process.
Okay. I have another question from a listener, and they want to know, what do you plan to do about the chaos in the education center and the education system? Is there a way that MCK can help? And is there going to be a plan of action?
Okay, so this one doesn't touch Tonya whatsoever.
This is for you, Ross.
Solely in mine. Okay, what I can say in response to that is that we have been involved. I'm not the lead in the portfolio. Harry Rice is the lead. He's unavailable. He's not here today with me for this interview. From the outset of being on council and having a portfolio, we have been involved, and we are looking at the integrity and of the education system in Kahnawake, because it's there for the community, it's there for the children, and so as a council, and on that portfolio, there's. As you know, Joe Norton, the Grand Chief, he's ex officio on all files, but in the case of education file, there are two new chiefs that took over that file. He's taken an active role within there as much as is possible. So we strategize about where to go. But we've been looking at the situation having to do with education. I think there are some challenges that we're looking at. We have been looking at and trying to help. But the thing really is to keep in mind that it's about our kids. It's about our children. It's about education, and that's what has to work. I'm reluctant to say go too much further with that, except to say that we are keeping abreast of things happening within the education system. Some of the concerns that are being voiced on the part of parents and so on. And looking at the best way to be able to resolve. It's not picking sides,
Yeah.
It's about what is in the best interests of the community in terms of educating our children.
Because I know today, some of the youth from the Kahnawake Survival School are trying to raise some concerns. I've been to some of the meetings, and people are concerned, and people are feeling that nothing is getting done. And that's what I'm reading. That's not my opinion. I'm just telling you what I'm reading.
I understand.
So I'm asking the question because people feel something needs to get done. So that's why I'm asking.
Believe me, I know. And the fact is that I feel deeply about the issues. Okay, I feel deeply about the concerns of all parties within you call them stakeholders within that, and but you still have to move forward in I think a judicious way, in an objective way, and. People right now are feeling very, very stressed. I understand that, okay? And we feel their stress, okay? And we feel their frustrations. And that should be not forgotten. And I would say, if please believe me when I say that. I feel it too, because you know what? I'm not just a council chief. I'm not just an education portfolio chief. I'm also acting as a parent, as a grandparent with a child in the system, and so I'm one of all of us. So just that's as much as I could say at this.
So
moment.
I guess at this point in time, the issue is being dealt with or worked on and coming up with some kind of resolution. It should come to, and that's.
No, and I understand that people will say, you know what, but it's not happening fast enough. There are people who feel that they've been impacted they know the number of days.
Yes.
Okay, and I really do feel for that. As a human being, as a parent, as somebody sitting on council.
Ross, do you feel there should be qualification standards for all teachers in the KEC system? And he is aware that only 5% of the kids are functioning at grade level based on standard testing in English and math. Is that acceptable?
Well, the short answer to that is, you know what, our kids are entitled to the best education that we can give to them, that we have a responsibility to give to them. And I'll leave it at that. And of course, you know what, you'd say, well, teachers need to be qualified to teach. And if there are, by the way, I'll say if there are kids with special needs, their needs need to be addressed too, and seriously.
Yeah. So we still have a long way to go and work to do, basically, and trying to meet everybody's needs. And I think sometimes that's the difficulty.
It's difficult, but it's worth the trouble. And by the way, that's not something that's going to be fixed and then it's never for once and for all time. And this is an ongoing. Everything is ongoing. Everything will change over time, and everything. Sometimes there'll be struggles. Sometimes there'll be, but it's a cliche. But sometimes you get pearls from irritation.
Yeah,
if we all keep that goal in mind, which is, you know what? I imagine there are people on all sides of the community who would say, looking at the education system, we all agree that our children, our education system should be the envy of all education systems in the surrounding area. People out there should want to send their kids here, okay? But we have to deal with things on the ground here, and we have to roll up our sleeves. We have to put our hearts into it. We have to put aside sometimes differences and able to come together and work for what is the real goal, which is our children.
I have one more question for you. What do you think about the money for the IEPs? And what about the letter from the Education Center apologizing for not meeting their children's needs?
I can't comment on the letter that you last described, but the issue of IEPs. Number one, look at if there are IEPs that have to have been developed, if there are psychoeducational assessments that have been done, then those things need to be put into action. There need to be, for that to happen. And to what degree they are happening is a question that's being raised, and it's being raised by some of the parents. And I understand their concerns.
Okay. On that note, let's take a break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Tetewathá, Partyline Talkshow. I'm your host, Lou Ann Stacey, and joining me for MCK Friday are Chief Ross Montour and Chief Tonya Perron. And I guess we'll move on to some other portfolios, some updates. And Ross is dying to talk about archaeology.
Everybody grab a double. No, I mean, it's okay. Some people would say, well, archaeology, what's that all about? What do we, why is that important? It's important because not just for, the sake of interest in, digging the ground up and seeing what kind of artifacts come up. I mean, we have as a council, we have a goal. I don't know how many people are aware that that the province of Quebec has historically taken a position with us that they were here before us. It sounds ridiculous. You're laughing.
Yeah, I know. I can't help it.
They hinge that on certain archaeological theories, which speak to the Iroquois that were here, the St. Lawrence Iroquois, and they're gone now, and you people are refugees from the Mohawk Valley. Okay, and so that's a battle with which we're engaged, because it does matter. It matters when you start talking about when you talk about rights, when you talk about territorial issues, things beyond the scenery, which are in fact nation claims.
Right.
But in terms of us doing work to establish that those people, we are the descendants of those people that were here, that met Cartier, that met those people that, at that point in time. And not some vague thing called the St. Lawrence Iroquois. And that involves some work. And mind you, there's a body of archaeology that has presented and looked at narrow slices of evidence to say, well, see, your pottery is different. The first time I ever had a discussion about archaeology, it was about 20 years ago. I was working for the Eastern Door, and through Canada there were archaeologists from McGill University, students that were working with kids from Cattery, and they were digging in Sandra Bova's yard, and they were digging down. And I said, "What are you going to do when they dig down far enough and you find out that we were here all along?" And they said, "Oh no, that's the St. Lawrence Iroquois." And yes,
wow.
I mean, going back that far. So that's some of the things we're actively. We just went to Quebec City recently to an archaeological conference. And my perspective is, hey, you know what? I'm not an archaeologist. I'm not a scientist. I don't need somebody to tell me how many fish bones you found to find that the main portion of our diet living along the river was fish. But we were here, and we were there to dispute the theory and defend our interests and territorial assertions along the river and our presence in ancient times to present times. So that's very important, and that ties in also with another portfolio which I have, which is the Indigenous Rights and Research portfolio. And this is all, in the main, we deal with things that having to do with the duty to consult. Okay, so there are all kinds of projects. There are either port projects or bridge projects or electric train projects, what have you. Okay, along in the territory. There was a point in time, and I bring that up sometimes when, nobody consulted us about anything. They said there's a seaway coming through, and that's all there is to it. The only thing that had any sway in those days was people at the Kahnawake golf course said it ain't coming through theirs. So let those Indians along the river suffer the consequences. And that was about the extent of it.
Wow.
Okay. Now, there are governments out there, provincial, and there are ministries that we're in a phase right now where they're taking us into account in terms of consultation. But there are other aspects to that too, and they impinge on environmental considerations. We're concerned about the protection of our hunting and harvesting rights within our territory in the broad, and I don't mean within this little patch of land here. I mean in the broadest sense. We're involved with a study looking at the waterway from the Lake Champlain to the Richelieu River, which is, by the way, Christine Zachary will constantly remind me that is called, and we call that the Mohawk River. Okay, that was once upon a time our highways were the waterways, and that is our territory, and so that's a lot of the things that we're interested in. Archaeology will move into that, so we're looking at developing that because we need to be able to advance our rights assertions and our presence. We need to challenge wherever someone's going to tell you that their ancestors came from France, that they were here before you. No.
Well, it's interesting because I had a chance earlier in the week to talk to Russell Daibo about the White Paper 2.0. And that was one of the things that he distinguished, is that usually for our community, it's always been the battle of the land and to be able to prove. So to me, that work kind of pushes towards that, that the government's not going to assert either on a provincial level or on a national level that they could decide for us what we want. And that's what, leading to that. So the work here to me is linked very clearly that you have to continue to do that. And if there's ways to fight for it, then that's what we have to kind of do.
Yeah, I recall interviewing Joe when he first got back into office, and we're looking at the idea of a title claim, which goes beyond the seigneury of Sault Ste. Louis claim is a specific claim, okay, and it's just, and it regards a piece of geography and some within the historic period, post contact period, and I view that's a surface thing. See, that's about 2 inches of the ground, okay, but beneath all of that, underpinning all of that, this is Mohawk territory, okay, and we're moving towards the assertion that there's nothing that you can say that you can really convince yourself, if you're honest, that it isn't us.
Yeah.
And that's really important to me.
Yeah. And it's a shame we have to do that, but we have to do what we're going to do,
I don't think it is a shame, Lou Ann. It's not a shame.
That we have to constantly battle, like somebody's comes up with another theory, it's like, and then the government comes out and says, well, we're going to dictate, we take the S3, or we're going to tell, like constantly over the years of history trying to tell us what we should and shouldn't do.
Who we are.
Or who we are, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I get you.
Yeah,
I
that's
understand.
my point, sorry.
I feel you, as they say.
Yeah.
However, that's a given.
Yeah.
Time has taught me that that's a given, okay? And so I'm not going to stop there. I'm not going to say, well, why do you keep doing that? Why? Bullshit. Pardon me. I'm sorry. I apologize.
You're in trouble, Ross. I hope the board yells at you. No,
Okay.
kidding.
See, it's not really so.
Now I'm going to get messages. But the thing is Ross, and all the joking aside, that's the passion. But we continually have to fight that in addition to other topics.
But we do have a good fight,
yes,
do we not?
We do. Yes, we do. Russell said the same thing. He said, and that's a difficulty across the country because a lot of other First Nations are not in the same boat, or not in the same thing. And as bad as some people think things are in the community, we're way further ahead than most other communities, and kind of sometimes have to be the pioneers in a lot of these battles.
Again, I mean, Lou Ann, I don't even necessarily think about it in those terms about how much further behind we may be in relation to other communities. All I know is, okay, it isn't about Ross winning a fight. It isn't about us winning. It's about our kids. It's about going down those 7 generations, and our responsibility and our obligation here today is to ensure that those children have a future as a people, in a place with their rights intact. That's everybody. We're all engaged on that. I gotta say, somebody recently said to me, How does it feel to be on the other side of the fence, basically, you know? And I said, who keeps putting up all these fences? You know, who keeps drawing all these lines? I mean, how far down the road are we in that kind of thinking? We can't afford to be like that. And me, I'm not going to fight about those things. Like we all have our place, we all have our view, but we need to find a way to bring those all together and focus that, channel that, so that overall that future exists for our people.
And I think that's a very good point, because that's the biggest issue, is us coming together. And I don't care what the topic is. We have to do things together and not waste our energy fighting amongst ourselves and not being able to move forward.
Exactly.
Yeah, because we have a bigger battle to fight.
That's exactly.
Out there.
Exactly.
And we do better collectively fighting it.
But we need also to hear divergent views as
Absolutely.
well, respectfully
Absolutely.
and openly, with our ears open, our eyes open.
And not judging because it's Ross or it's Tonya or it's me or
all those
whoever,
guys.
you know, them again, you know, and that's the kind of thinking, you know, can we just sit in dialogue? Can we just sit and I think one of the things I've learned is that, you know, sometimes we have more common things than people really think we do, you know, and you know, it's nice. I don't like that. I'll draw a line in the sand, or I'll put up a fence, or you know, and that's the kind of thinking that has to stop, because there's other people that we're battling against and constantly battling against.
Here's something to I just had a conversation just the other day with some community members, and it was like, you know, you might have your neighbor, you don't talk to them. I don't talk to that guy because, you know, whatever, right? But if you were someplace far away from Kahnawake and I see somebody jumping on Lou Ann, no matter what I think about Lou Ann at home, I have thought, no, I'm going to get in because I know her.
Yeah.
You know, she's from Kahnawake. She's one of us. And then you know, and that there are times in our history, you know, that have drawn us together and focused our energies. You know, maybe it was hard to get everybody there. 1990 comes to mind, okay? But people pulled together. The ice storm, people pulled together. They didn't have to be told. They didn't have to be cajoled, pressured, whatever. They knew somebody needs this. I can do this. It gets done.
And that's the kind of thing we need to do more day-to-day stuff, you know?
Absolutely.
Okay, we have maybe about 7-8 minutes, so any other updates that you'd like to...
I'll just quickly let the community know that in terms of the Cannabis Control Board, there was a second call out that went out. So we did receive another number of applicants. On June 24th, it will be going to the table for the appointments. So the board should be in place by the end of the day that day, and as quick as we can get it moving, it will be they will be given the tools that they need in order to start drafting the regulations, their internal regulations and procedures, and hopefully that will go quicker than slower. So we're really excited about that. I know a lot of people have been patiently waiting. I get a number of calls on a regular basis as to when is it going to be in place, what can I do? So I'm happy to report that, and we just wanted to say that we did get, like I said, a number of applications both times around, and it was really appreciative, the people that applied and their different points of view. Can honestly say, and we're not going to name names, but there were some individuals that were interviewed that they're not in favor, others are in favor, but regardless, they all had the same perspective, in the sense that you need to have some regulations. So I mean that was a little bit of a refreshing approach to it. So
if I could, the thing is with this particular subject, it all came from, we knew that there was going to be the legalization of recreational cannabis. Very important distinction. Recreational and medical. One of the last times we appeared, we talked about medical versus the other things in relation to the moratorium in the community until the law is up and running. And one of the tensions has been is that, we're trying to allow for the economic opportunities that it does present, but also in our community, it's been a very long history in terms of social policy, having to do with cannabis among other substances, in terms of tolerance and that. And it's really good. Tonya pointed out, we had people that came forward to say, I want to sit on the Cannabis Control Board, who, I don't know, the people were, everybody said, we need to see this work. The regulation needs to be there. We need to see some economic benefit. Questions came down to whether I in my heart, I am opposed to that substance being available in the community. And so we just thought that was a very, very healthy cross-section of people. And I made a point of thanking people for taking the time and the consideration to step forward and apply. And yes, like we have, I think right now, I think we agree, we have the council table will have a good body of candidates to select from in the creation of the Cannabis Control Board.
Yes, and a diverse range for sure.
That's really good.
And the important thing is now, in addressing the other side, is okay, we need to get it moving, because
right.
It's one thing, people might say, hey, well, I thought you passed the law. Okay, like how come it's not functioning right now? But the Cannabis Control Board is going to have a very important role in defining, how many permits there'll be, how the actual regulations will be functioning with, and they will have legal assistance in terms of drafting those as well. So we're getting there.
I know sometimes it's not quick enough, but just saying.
No, it's a cliche, but it's been said many times. Haste makes waste.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
You want to make sure it's to do it in the quickest, most effective way, and that may take some time.
Usually does. Anything else?
No.
No.
I do well. Other than to say thank the community for their patience, their passion, their taking the time of their lunch hour to listen to us, to have updates. And I would say, you know what, if you have questions, if you have concerns about any of the things that we've discussed, you can call us. We'll take your calls. We'll talk to you.
Do people like to call and ask questions, or?
To me, yes.
Yeah, okay.
I get a number of calls in a week from community members on various issues. For the majority of those issues, they are issues related to my portfolios, but sometimes I get questions on other matters, and I've from time to time spent an hour or two on the phone with somebody to, give them all the information they needed. I welcome anybody into my office if need be for a face-to-face. I'm always available for that. And when I say always available, of course I do have meetings, but I find the time to fit people into the schedule.
It's always important to hear what people have to say, what they're feeling, what they're going through, what their concerns are, and to do what we can to help them.
Okay. Thank you so much to Ross Montour and Tonya for coming in, and really appreciate making the time to come here and share what's happening in the community at your level, and to shed some perspective on some of the issues. Coming up with the 1 o'clock news is Kathleen Speckard. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Onagiwahi.
Yawako, Danoona.